Hello, fifth grade. We're ready to move along to lesson 87. So we already talked about first class levers and we talked about second class levers. So remember, first class, the fulcrum is between the load and the effort. Second class, you have the load between the fulcrum and the effort. And in third class, you can probably guess what's going to happen next. So this is the last type of lever that there is. Okay, so we're on pages 6 and 7 to review kind of where those are. And on page 7, I'm going to go to paragraph 4 and talk about third class levers. Okay, so like I said, it's pretty simple for third class. You could probably guess. So a third class lever has the effort between the fulcrum and the load. So first class, the fulcrum is in the middle. Second class, load is in the middle. Third class, the effort is in the middle. Okay? A small movement near the fulcrum produces a larger movement near the load. Okay? So in paragraph 4, at the beginning of the first sentence, highlight the words third class lever. And then to remember which one it is, you're going to highlight the words effort between. So the effort is between on this one. So if you look at the pictures of the third class levers on page 7, you can see some examples. So the first picture is a man using a broom to sweep. So obviously when you use a broom, you're not going to put your hands way at the top of the handle. You're not going to put them way at the bottom of the handle. You're going to put them in the middle. That's where your effort is. Wherever your hands are going, that's where the effort is happening. So with a broom, that's a third class lever because your effort is in the middle. Okay? So the effort is the bottom hand. The load is what's on the floor, what you're sweeping on the floor. And then the fulcrum is a hand at the top of the broom. So they have like one hand here and one hand here. The fulcrum is this spot that's staying put. So that's going to be the top of the broom. Okay. And then if you have it printed out, you could label those on your picture as well. So the load, bottom, whatever's being swept, you can put an L, E for effort in the middle of the broom, and then F or a triangle for the fulcrum at the top. Okay, so the movement at the end of the broom is larger than the movement by your hand producing the effort. So wherever the load's going, that's going to be the biggest movement in the third class levers. Okay. So we talked about the labeling it. Then the next picture, the second picture on page 7, is a hammer being used to drive a nail into a piece of wood. Okay? So you may remember we talked about pulling it out of the wood. That was a different type of lever. If you're pulling the nail out, that's going to be different. That's going to be a first class lever. But if you're hammering it in, that's a third class lever because the load is at the end. The effort, you're holding it kind of towards the middle of the hammer. Okay, so a hammer being used to drive a nail into wood is an example of a third class lever. So we're going to label the fulcrum, effort, and load on the picture if you have it printed out. The fulcrum's at the end of the handle. That's the part that's staying put. Okay, so you could put a triangle or put an F for fulcrum. The effort is where the hand is always, so you put E for effort. And then the load is the nail that's being hammered in. Okay, and the third picture is some tongs. If you've ever used tongs, we use them to like pick up hot dogs when we're grilling, things like that. You can use them in salads. Usually use them in the kitchen to pick things up. Okay, so each handle of the tongs is a third class lever. Okay, it says tongs make it possible for me to pick up ice cubes without touching them. I mean, you can. A lot of people, if they're in a hotel and they have an ice bucket, they'll include some tongs in there so you can put the ice in your glass without having to touch it with your dirty hands. Okay, so the fulcrum of the tongs is going to be where the two handles meet together. Okay, that's the fixed point that's not moving is always your fulcrum. Okay, that's where they're meeting together. The effort is between the fulcrum and the load. You kind of hold the tongs in the middle of them. You don't hold them at the very end where they're attached, and you don't hold them where they're grabbing whatever it is you're grabbing. You hold them in the middle of the tongs. So that's where your effort is. And then the load is between the two tips, whatever you're picking up with it, that's going to be your load. Okay, so if you have that printed out, you can label those. The fulcrum, where they meet together, you can put the triangle or an F. The effort is where you're grabbing the tongs, and then the load is between the tips. So tongs are a third class lever because the effort is between the fulcrum and the load. A small movement near the fulcrum produces a larger movement near the load. So it says label them. And now we can draw a diagram of a third class lever below paragraph 4 on page 6. Sorry, I think I told you page 7 before. So let me show you a picture of the 3 different types of levers that you should have drawn by your paragraphs. Okay. So your first class lever, you have your long rod or whatever it is you're using as your lever. And then your fulcrum goes in the middle. You have your effort here and your load here. So first class, the fulcrum is in the middle. Okay. Second class is where you have your load in the middle. Okay. Remember we said that's kind of like a wheelbarrow where you're lifting up on the top and you're putting the whatever it is you're carrying in the middle. And then the fulcrum is where it's touching the ground or where it's touching the wheels. Okay, that's your second class. Then your third class, you have the effort between the fulcrum and the load. Okay, third class. Effort is between the fulcrum and the load. Okay, so the different classes are just where they're positioned according to each other. So remember we said this is like a pair of tongs, or it's like a hammer nailing, or it's like a broom sweeping. It's going to be your third class. Okay, fulcrum is the fixed point that's not moving. Effort is where you're putting that force in, and then the load is what it is you're moving. Okay, and there is a slideshow, I believe. Let me check here. Yes, there's a lesson 87 slideshow to look at some third class levers, and so I will post the link to that, and you can watch that as well. See you next time.